Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. Can I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching your video off when you're not addressing the meeting. Those of us attending virtually who wish to contribute to any item should write speak in the Teams chat function, and you will be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your issue or question be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so we can deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by a roll call. If any member is to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or could you write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you return. This allows us to record member presence. We have several important reports to consider today, and I anticipate we'll deal with these in our usual efficient manner. Item number 1 is surrounding apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Tracy, could we have the surrounding and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. We've got 19 members present. We've got 4 members present in person in the Council Hall, and that being Councillors McKee, Nicholson, Sloan and Thompson, and 14 members present on Teams. 1 member is not present, being Councillor Ronnie, and I've got an apology from Councillor McClelland. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy, and I approve members' remote participation. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest that they wish to make? Gail?
Thank you, Chair. Declare an interest in item 4 as Consular Resources spokesperson. Obviously, I've been involved in national budget negotiations, but I will remain for the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 is minutes of the previous meeting of the 9th of November 2021. Are we happy to note the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of November? Take that as a yes. Item number 4 is the local government finance settlement for 2022/23 and the impact on the financial strategy. Members are provided with updated information on the Council's overall budget position following the announcement of the local government finance settlement for 2022/23. We're provided with the details of the settlement and the specific commitments that local authorities are expected to deliver in return for the settlement. The committee is also updated on the projected funding gap reflected in the settlement and the changes to the Council's budget operating assumptions detailed at section 3.15. As detailed within the report, the settlement from the Scottish Government will leave our Council with an £11.7 million funding gap for the next financial year. The local government finance settlement has been described as unacceptable by COSLA, and I completely agree with this view. This settlement does not reflect the urgent multi-agency work our Council still participates in every day to respond to the COVID pandemic. It does not reflect the relatively high levels of inflation being experienced, and does not pass on additional funding to cover the employers-related national insurance contribution increase. The leader has already written alongside all other council leaders to the First Minister and the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Economy to iterate a number of these points. This correspondence is provided for members' fullest information, and council leaders will receive an update on these matters at their scheduled meeting tomorrow. Before I move to member debate, I would like to move an additional 2 recommendations on behalf of the administration in response to the finance settlement. That being, first of all, that we note the letter signed by the leader alongside all 32 Scottish local authority leaders, and 2.6, agree with COSLA's position that this settlement is unacceptable and that the council leader should write on behalf of our council to the First Minister and the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Economy to set out the impact that this settlement will have on Dumfries and Galloway. And I'll upload that into the chat. Paul Garrett is here to assist if members have any questions, and I will open up to member debate. Any members who wish to come in? I'm not seeing anybody wishing to speak, but I'll wait a couple of seconds. Ronnie?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I think it is very important that we do support COSLA's stance on the settlement. It's the worst settlement I've seen for a long time now. It doesn't matter which way you spin it. You know, say there's more money, but there's more ring-fence money, which affects the council in a huge way, and it will have an impact locally. So I think the local aspect of the letters should be sent to both Nicola Sturgeon and Kate Forbes. And one of the reasons for that as well is that, you know, Nicola Sturgeon has responded to the leader previously, and that is in the papers. So I think we still should send a letter to both of them with all the points that's going to affect Dumfries and Galloway. And I think we had a discussion earlier regarding that, and I think some of the points he brought up was very relevant to put in a letter.
Okay, thank you. Dick?
Thanks, Chair. I support the recommendations there because, once again, local government has been treated with disdain by the Scottish Government, the Scottish Nationalist and Green Coalition. So not only do I think we should be writing to the First Minister, the Finance Secretary, but the joint leaders of the Green Party, who obviously in the past were known for supporting local government, but they seem to have abandoned us as well. So I think if we write to the joint leaders of the Greens as well, that would be putting a bit of pressure on them to support us.
Thank you, Dick. Jane?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I absolutely agree with you, and the proposals that are here in front of us, and the extra remarks made by Councillor Brodie and Councillor Nicholson. I think that we might remember back that in 2005 or so, the then new government started off tremendously well, suggesting that they would remove hypothecation, they would leave local government to be responsible for local priorities. And steadily, over the last 15 years, that has been quietly eroded. And we're coming up with something at this point now, which is becoming really very, very tough for us to deliver. We've been at the forefront of the fight against the pandemic. And I think we are being stymied. In fact, I think we're being stuffed. So I'm very happy with the proposals that you have here now, and I would agree that we should be writing to the Greens as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Ivor?
Thank you, Chair. I think we would support this additional recommendations. I think all councillors in Dumfries and Galloway would see that as the least we could do. I think when you look at councils down south have had money put in their budgets to actually cover the national insurance and various other points, that Scotland would get the consequentials of that, and we haven't received them through this budget settlement. Hopefully, minimum that we can achieve is to get those consequentials, but I think we should be looking for more than that to get our fair share. And I think the point Jane made, where in the past hypothecation was to be scaled back, it seems to be stronger now than ever.
Thank you. Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, the situation is where we are in terms of the budget, and certainly as the administration leads, yourself and I have been working hard to see, so we have our balanced budget, but there's no denying the fact that this is going to be hugely challenging for the local authority. And I think it is really important to note that every single one of the COSLA leaders did sign that letter to Scottish Government. And I think it is important that we lay our case out. So I just want to put on record that yes, I think it is imperative that we do everything we possibly can to ensure that Dumfries and Galloway gets a fair and reasonable share of the budget, so that when we come together to propose our budgets going forward, that we've got as much that we can do. Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting an awful lot of feedback coming back. I think my points were made there, so thank you, convener. But also to note that there is still debate going through Parliament, and I would hope that we hopefully will find ourselves with a little bit more. But I think it is imperative that we do put pressure on where we can and where we have the ability. Thanks.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very supportive of taking whatever action we can and whatever representation we can make. So fully support your amendment to or additional recommendation. But just one thing I would like to highlight is that we're looking at this and we're thinking about this year. But let's all bear in mind that if we don't fight now and we don't get an improved settlement, this will be the baseline for next year and years after that. This battle will continue, and we need to make a stand. We really need to do what we can.
Thank you. Rob?
Thank you, Adam. I'll apologise to colleagues immediately for the sounds off camera of a neighbour testing a motorbike engine. This, I think, is one of the problems with working from home, although in other respects it's clearly very helpful and an efficient way of doing things. I wanted to reflect on the COSLA position because I think there is perhaps a greater degree of unanimity in that than certainly I have experienced almost any time over the past four and a half years or so. That I have attended on behalf of Dumfries and Galloway Council. While Councillor McGregor is of course, very deeply involved with the negotiations, I'm clear that the meetings that leaders have requested are taking place, and while we don't know the outcome of them yet, we're looking forward and remain hopeful that the updates that come from those may be a bit more positive than the situation we're looking at this afternoon. And clearly in setting out the Council's position on these things, I hope we'll also want to be flexible on it should we get some good news in due course. But that, I think, reflects an ongoing and I hope changing situation that is yet to become clear, perhaps. But certainly from a national perspective, so far as COSLA is concerned, it's my view that we have more unanimity than we, I think, ever have. And thereby a stronger voice as a result of it, which I think is welcome. Clearly, we're going to have to see where that goes in terms of being fruitful. But I am reassured and encouraged that the national voice of Scottish local government is very unified on this matter. I think that is helpful. And we'll await further updates. I'm sure all of us will await further updates on that with a great deal of interest. Thank you, Adam.
Elaine, and apologies, Elaine, I completely missed your mention in the chat as I was uploading the additional recommendation, so apologies about that. But Elaine?
Yeah, no problem with that, because actually councillors have been members have been doing it anyway, but obviously if I'm to write on behalf of members, I need to know, to make sure that I'm reflecting the points that you want me to make in the letter, in the annual letter to Kate Forbes. She must be sitting there waiting for a letter from me. But so a lot of good points made already. Anything further that Paul wants to? Obviously not in any way a political point, but if there are points that Paul particularly wants us to highlight or wants me to highlight in terms of facets around or aspects of our settlement which need to be brought to the attention of the Cabinet Secretary, can I ask Paul to do that, just to make sure we cover everything that people feel needs to be raised in the letter? Hopefully, obviously, it would be nice to think that maybe we'll get a wee bit good news this afternoon, and obviously I'll not be writing the letter until after this afternoon, so obviously that will reflect that. And if we do get the national insurance money, would be nice. If we do get something like that, it's an opportunity. We'll obviously reflect that in the letter, but would make the other points which members would like me to make. But to agree with Councillor Brodie, I don't think that the Greens should be let off the hook. They've taken loads and loads of credit every other year to say, look what we've won for local government, and then they're in government, and it doesn't seem to be making any difference to what is happening in terms of the local government settlement. So I think it would be useful to write to the Greens as well.
Thank you, Lane. I'll bring in Paul.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, no, happy obviously to support Leader in terms of developing that letter. In terms of kind of key issues, obviously the national insurance one that's been discussed is one that's got a particularly high profile at the minute. The Scottish Government did receive that additional funding in terms of the consequentials from the UK Government, and it had been anticipated, fully anticipated, that would be passed on in the local government funding settlement. So it's a surprise and disappointing that that hasn't happened, at least. So as the leaders just alluded to, there was a discussion yesterday with the First Minister and the Cabinet Secretary and COSA representatives, and stage one of the budget bill has been debated at the Scottish Parliament this afternoon. So obviously we'll be keeping an eye on developments there, but happy once we get that bit of further information from those discussions to work with the Leader in terms of submission of the letter, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Tommy?
Thanks, Chair. There seems to be a lot of talk yet again today about sending strongly worded letters to the Scottish Government. I think the days for strongly worded letters to this lot up in Edinburgh have gone. We've got to take a vocal body and a bodily body to Edinburgh and make our feelings known, not just us, every council in Scotland. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Tommy. I have no members wishing to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. I will be happy to, first of all, to note 1, 2, 3 and 4 on block.
Noted.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll be happy to happy to amend what I have put into the chat function and read out earlier on to reflect the points made by Councillor Brodie, and that the council leader should write on behalf of the council to the First Minister and the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and the Economy, and the co-leaders of the Scottish Green Party. Are members happy to agree to those 2 additional recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 5 is further development of the capital investment strategy. This report develops the Council's current agreed capital investment strategy to reflect recent developments, including the announcement of the 2022/23 local government finance settlement and updated projections of future capital investment levels. Paul Garrett is here to assist if members have any questions. Is there any questions or discussion from members? Okay, I'm not seeing any members wanting to come in. So I will move to the recommendations. Are members happy to note 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 on block?
Noted.
Thank you. Item number 6 is a Council Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for 2021 for the period ending the 31st of September 2021. This report provides members with an overview of the Council's overall financial monitoring position in this current financial year and includes an update on the main financial implications associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Paul Garrett and Gillian Ross are here to assist if members have any questions. Is there any questions from members? Dick?
Thanks, Chair. Again, on the page 84, the severe weather, and obviously there was extra costs involved in removing the bridges which collapsed, 2 bridges which collapsed into the River Anne, and has that been taken into account in the budget pressures? And on that, I believe that the Scottish Government, the committee were looking to have these bridges renewed at some point, but the response from the Scottish Government seems to be that you could do it through the Belvin scheme, but I think leaders told me that is not, well, it's obviously not possible to do that. Could we follow up that conversation as well on the severe weather impact, please?
Paul?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, all the costs that the Council has incurred to date in relation to the Annan Bridges issue is reflected in the report, and that also includes an allocation that was agreed by the Communities Committee to support site clearance in relation to the bridges. The indication initially that the Belvin scheme may be an opportunity to provide some funding support isn't really the case, in terms of the Belvin scheme is quite restrictive in terms of the expenditure it covers. It has to be expenditure incurred at the time, so it can't provide any support for replacement or subsequent works following an incident. So any support for future work in relation to the bridges would require to be looked at separately, either through council funding or through some other means that the Scottish Government may be able to support. And I know that colleagues and communities are in discussion with Scottish Government officials on that at the minute. The other point to make in terms of Belvin is that you have to exceed a threshold level before the Scottish Government support kicks in. The threshold for us for the current year is just under £700,000. So in terms of the expenditure we've incurred in relation to the storms to date and the bad weather to date, we're significantly short of that level. So it's highly unlikely that the Belvin scheme will provide any support in relation to the incidents we've seen this year.
Okay, Ivor?
Thank you, Chair. It's paragraph 317.18 sort of onwards. The COVID financial implications at 318, their estimated summary there. Are we able to sort of firm up on those figures, or are we sort of looking to actually that being the figure at the end of the year, roughly? I realise we can't just say what it would be, but likes of the additional ventilation requirements and energy consumption, can we say, yes, we're on target to hit 300,000, or is it going to be slightly more or slightly less?
Paul?
The summary that Councillor Hislop's referring to in the report at paragraph 318 and 319, they are, I think, firm estimates in terms of we're well advanced during the year now. We're not expecting any significant changes to those between now and the end of March. Probably the one that is the least robust is the one that you've just referred to, because we're still partially the way through the winter. And in terms of heating bills, and obviously they take a wee bit of time to come through as well. So we've been doing a bit of work on consumption to date in relation to our buildings with the windows being open, additional ventilation, and what that's meant in terms of increased energy costs. Based on those initial figures, the 300,000 seems a reasonable estimate, but as the winter continues, that might need to be updated. But I wouldn't expect the kind of bottom line position for the council to change significantly from the level reflected in the report.
Okay, Katie?
Thank you, convener. Thanks. Thanks, Paul, for the report before us. It's just really a sort of quick point, and apologies. Just like the Deputy Leader appears to be having a motorbike outside, I've got a child warming up on trumpet upstairs, so apologies if that's coming through into the committee. The Radio Hill site that's outstanding income, obviously this has been going on for numerous years now, and I note that there is a report coming to committee, to the Communities Committee. However, it makes reference to the amount outstanding. Will there be an ongoing amount that's due that would come to the council? So clearly we've got that figure of 779k, but that's the outstanding amount. Would we be expected to get a regular income coming in from that once all these contracts, etc., are dissolved? Thanks.
Paul?
Yes, absolutely. That is the case. We actually have a budget based on projected income from these sites. The actual basis of the outstanding amount that we're currently seeking or pursuing at the minute is actually a build-up over recent years of that annual amount. So what we're looking to do is clear that off in terms of the amounts due to date, and then start to receive the funding on an ongoing basis, which will be in line with the level we've got in the budget at the minute.
Okay, Elaine.
Just in response to Councillor Brodie's point, when after the meeting with the Deputy First Minister, he did pass on a contact from within the civil service for our officers to work with. So I presume that the communities, it would be for people to the Communities Directorate to be working with that, but I presume that is ongoing. But he also made the point that there was some precedent where another bridge somewhere, I can't remember exactly where it was now, had been washed away, and the Scottish Government had made some financial contribution towards its replacement. So it's maybe not so much an issue for finance, procurement and transformation, but certainly for communities it would be to continue to press with that, that there is some precedent for assistance from the Scottish Government with a bridge that had been lost. And, that is something I think definitely think that over the future months we should continue to press on. Obviously, the first issue is to get removed the bits of the bridges which are still lying in the river. But thereafter, in terms of the replacement, I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that there's precedent for having some assistance from the Scottish Government.
Thanks, Elaine. I've got no other members who wish to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. Are we happy to note recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 4 on block?
Noted.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7 is a request for funding. Members are asked to agree to a request from Communities Committee to allocate up to 246k from the Change Fund to meet the identified resource needs to develop and deliver agreed public transport and travel transformation work streams. Douglas Kirkpatrick and Gordon Bryce are here to assist if members have any questions, and I'll open up to member debate. Is any members who wish to come in? Ivor.
Thank you, Chair. It's maybe I'm not reading this right, but it was in is it the transportation side? We're looking for a member of staff. Now, when I was reading the sort of appendix, the sort of issues we have are services not being run, and we're missing services, and that was why we need the additional staff to cover the work sort of load. And the reason was lack of drivers and vehicles. It was in here that were failing. Now, it's maybe me, but why are we employing someone to drive a desk when we might need someone to drive a bus, which would get them to actually deliver the service that's causing us an issue? Or have I read that wrong?
Douglas?
Yes, thanks for that. Yes, and apologies, Ivor, if it's not been clear within the report. What the it is very much an extract from a larger communities paper, which may have confused the matter to a degree. That we were just highlighting the issues that were ongoing at that time. When we took the paper to communities, and at that time we were very much Omicron was starting off. There were lots of drivers down. There were issues there. Those have levelled off now, and we're not failing on service as much. And this paper is very much about taking forward the transformation element, which is looking at moving DGC buses to a full PSV operation, taking the opportunities that new Transport Act bring to us. But to do that, we need that technical and the expertise in the transportation field, other than my limited expertise, to take that forward.
Chair, another thing is, this is 2-year funding that we're being asked to take out the Change Fund to bring in a staff resource to help with the workload. How are we going to, at the end of those 2 years, capture that knowledge? I think they're hoping to bring it in-house. Or are we hoping that by 2 years' time, we'll be able to integrate the additional staff into the budget? And if that's the case, should we not just baseline this into the budget rather than putting a sticking plaster, as it would seem, 2 years funding towards it? If they're needed, should we not be actually looking to have them in place?
Douglas?
As the initial part of this really is about building that business case to take the GC buses from where it is now to what it could possibly be in the future. And there may not be a business case for that as we move forward, but the use of the change fund is to develop that business case and to develop that knowledge, as you say, and that part of that business case may be the mainstreaming of that post or other posts going forward. But at this time we couldn't do that because we're not in a position to say whether or not there is a business case that we could bring to committee to actually agree the funding. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Douglas. Jane?
Thank you, Adam. This is actually going on from what Ivor's questioning has dug out. My feeling is that our arrangements for transport and management of transport in the region, the bus transport system, is actually very fragile. And I've always been rather amazed at the capacity that we has actually delivered the sort of service, albeit it is run, I think, on a sort of hand-to-mouth basis, and it's extremely risky. I think it could fall over very easily. So I'm perfectly happy to put in the resource that will be needed over the next 2 years to try and, yes, produce a proper case for the transport arrangements in the buses. But I did wonder about the fact of how easy it would be to capture a member of staff on the basis of a 2-year funding package, and whether or not it might be better to consider a longer term post in the future. I think we possibly need to do that in order to attract somebody. But is it a second see? Do we have to go out first and have a look and see whether we can find somebody who is suitably qualified to drive forward this programme?
Douglas?
I'm afraid, Councillor Maitland, you got it right in the head at the last point there. I think so, yes. I think we have to do that to see if we can get the qualified resource that we need to take this forward. And at the moment, I don't think we're in a position to actually go out for a longer term, and hence why we're looking to use the change fund to take this, hopefully build a case from there.
Okay, Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Councillor Maitland did quite rightly point out fragile is the term used at this point. Now, I don't sit on Communities Committee, so this is the first chance I've had a look, but obviously this has been, and I assume, much debated within the Communities Committee at the time. I think it's absolutely imperative that we do what we can to establish those business cases, to establish the future for the service, because I'm sure everybody's aware how fragile our bus services are, and certainly, I'm inundated with emails on this topic, and I'm also very well aware of what impacts it has on individuals who maybe cannot get to work. And to quote in one of the emails, the fact that the college bus on the A75 is no longer functioning because we've withdrawn that service. I think all these aspects need to be looked at in the whole, and we do need to transform the provision that we've got locally. So I'm absolutely happy to agree this. As I say, I wasn't at Communities Committee, but I'm assuming that the Communities Committee have thoroughly explored all these options too when they have come forward with this request to the Finance Committee today. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no further members who wish to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. Are we happy to, first of all, note the decision of Communities Committee?
Noted.
And secondly, to agree to the 2 years non-recurrent funding from the Change Fund.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item number 8 is the Capital Investment Strategy Monitoring Report for 2021-22 for the Q3 period. This report provides members with an overview of the financial and physical progress of the capital programme for the period to the 3rd of December 2021. Paul Garrett is here to assist if members have any questions, and I will open it up for member debate.
Sorry, I can't find my chat. I'd like to speak, please.
Okay, Jane, and you come in.
Thank you very much indeed. It was probably a slightly unhelpful question, Adam, at this stage. But I noticed on page 114 we're talking about DGRI mitigation works at New Abbey Road. Do we really need that? I'm really sorry to ask this question, but at this stage now, is it too late to ask that question, whether or not we should be continuing on with that project? It's an open question. I'm not meant to be mischievous. I'm just asking as to where we are with that, just very briefly.
That is probably a question for Communities Committee, but I will ask if there's any officers who want to come in and answer that question. Paul?
Thanks, Adam. As you say, this is part of the infrastructure asset class, which is delegated to Communities Committee. So the discussion on this particular project is through that service committee. But I'm aware, obviously, this has been in the programme for a considerable period. I think the kind of development of it is well advanced. It's just that there's been a bit of a delay of late. But I have to admit, I wasn't aware there was kind of any concern regarding the need for the project itself. As I say, it's been agreed through the Communities Committee. It's been in the programme for a significant period, but I'm happy to liaise with the relevant officers for the next update for the Communities Committee to make sure that issue is covered. But I don't think there's any real issues or concerns regarding the need for the project itself.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I've got no other members who wish to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. Are we happy to note the financial and physical progress?
Noted.
Okay, thank you. Item number 9 is the Finance and Procurement Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for Q3 of the 2021-22 financial year. This report provides the third quarter revenue monitoring report for the Finance and Procurement Service, including the impact of ongoing financial implications associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Paul Garrett is here to assist members with any questions. Is there any questions from members? I'm not seeing anybody want to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. Are we happy to note the position at the end of December 2021?
Noted.
Thank you. Item number 10 is the review of internal financial procedures and procurement standing orders implementation plan update. This report presents the 5th update on the agreed implementation plan to address the recommendations from a review of internal financial procedures and procurement standing orders. Paul Garrett is here to assist if members have any questions, and I will open it up to member debate. I'm not seeing any members wanted to come in. So I will move to the recommendations. Are members happy that we've reviewed the update on the implementation plan progress?
Great.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the procurement and commissioning performance update for Q2 of the current financial year. This report provides an overview of the procurement activities during the second quarter of 2021/22 and highlights the forthcoming opportunities and events for local suppliers. Karen Scott is here to assist if members have any questions, and I will open it up to member debate. Ivor.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 157, Appendix 1. It's maybe just the way it's written. Number of local suppliers applying for a council contract were 36. And number of local suppliers awarded a contract were 44 in Q2. Should that be number of local suppliers applying and a number of contracts awarded to local suppliers? rather than local suppliers awarded a contract, because if there's only 36 applying, how can you give out 44? Should it be the other way around? It's just the way it's worded.
Karen?
Yeah, sorry, Ivor, you're correct in your understanding. It's the number of contracts, not the number of suppliers, just the way that we're able to capture the data. It's actually the contracts that we capture. So unfortunately, it was already locked into the system at the start of the year by the time we picked that up. So that'll be resolved for the new financial year in terms of the terminology.
Okay, thank you. I've got no other members who wish to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. Are we happy to note the update on the Council's procurement performance and activities for Q2?
Noted.
Thank you. Now move to item number 12, local initiatives in New Galloway. This report presents to members a Stage 2 asset transfer application from local initiatives in New Galloway and a business plan for the transfer of New Galloway Town Hall under the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015. The request has been considered by Stewardship Area Committee, and Ingrid Gemmell is here to assist if members have any questions, and I will open it up to member debate. Jane?
Thank you, Adam. Yes, this has been, I think, quite a long time in the cooking thereof, and I think it's finally arrived on our desks, our laptops, and I'm glad to be able to propose that we go for option 1. I think that's the right thing to do. I think also, Adam, that in terms of paragraph 3.9.2, I think we probably should make certain that the council could retrieve its asset under item C, under paragraph C, I think there. And I'm perfectly happy to be guided by the officers, but I think maybe we should go for option 1 and the possibility of bringing it back to the council for the benefit of the community, the wider community in New Galloway, should be made available to us. But that would be, I think, at the very extreme of any circumstances happening. So I take advice on that.
Okay, Ingrid.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm that should there be any cause for dissolution of the organisation, then the building would naturally transfer to another organisation that had the same objectives as Ling. So that should provide some reassurance.
Katie?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Ingrid, for the report today. And, we've got a really robust feasibility study as well for us to capture all the details there. I'm very much aware that this is common good, and I appreciate, and I've subsequently found out that New Galloway doesn't have a common good subcommittee. It's done via the area committee. So, we've gone through all those processes, and obviously it is subject to going to the sheriff as well, depending on what options we go for today. However, I am conscious of the £100,000 of the valuation of this, and then certainly when looking at option 2, I guess am I correct in my understanding of option 2, in which that the asset, we would agree the community asset transfer for the sum of £1. However, should the organisation choose to sell essentially the property within 5 years, anything the local authority would get basically £999,000 back. Is that correct? And if that was the case, how would that sit with the common good? Would it just automatically come back into the council because it wouldn't be able to go back into the common good? Hopefully, as I say, with a robust business case and lots of community support, that's not going to be the case. But, should the sale go through and it goes for the asking price and the valuation, where would that leave us as the local authority in terms of any funding potentially coming back to us?
So my understanding is that any potential sale of this property would have to be to another organisation who had community aims and objectives as is kind of stipulated in this request. On the other question, I wonder if I could bring my colleague Jamie Ferguson in, if that's possible.
Jamie?
I think Jamie's in the call.
Yeah. Just coming in on this one, Councillor Hagman. Yeah, I think your understanding is correct that should the organisation fold, I mean, the property should go over to another organisation under the kind of Oscar rules that has similar objectives. Should the organisation decide to dispose of the property, there's also rules within Oscar that the community should be involved in that decision, and that a sale would be around something that equally benefits the community. But the proposal as it stands in the option 2 certainly implies that the difference between the valuation and the price that the group is offering, which is the token £1, that sum would fall to the community group to repay. That's what the option actually says, as far as I can see. Hope that's helpful.
If I can come back in, I think I'm a bit more confused now, Jamie, but thank you for that. I guess my questions are, so in response to your answer there, is option 2 would say that Ling would be responsible for the £999,000 rather than as a result of any sale? Because if it was sold for £5, would they still be eligible to pay that money back? I'm just trying to get my head around what the different scenarios could mean.
That's what the option says, Councillor Hagman, that Ling would be responsible for the difference should the project fail. And my personal reading of that is that condition is that burden would fall to that community group.
Okay,
hope that's a wee bit clearer.
Thank you.
Ronnie?
No, can I just clarify something in the figures that's being bandied about? Is it, I mean, Councillor Hagman, and it was agreed by the officer, it would be 999,000. Is it £99,999? Or is it £999,000 that we need to pay back? I think option 2 does safeguard the council in a lot of ways and look after the, safeguarding the residents' money within the council. So I think option 2 is the best option.
Okay, Ingrid?
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. I just wanted to kind of point out and highlight maybe that, this group have managed to pull in already potentially £225,000 towards, some of the capital works that they want to do. So in terms of the funders, there may be a risk if that condition was set. So it's one for members' consideration, really, and I just wanted to make sure that members were aware of that.
Okay, so I've got no other members who wish to come in. We have had a proposal that would go with option 1 from Councillor Maitland and a proposal from Councillor Nicholson that would go with option 2. I am happy to second Councillor Nicholson. Ronnie, you want to come back in?
Oh, no, it's fine. It's taken care of, sorry.
Okay, Jane, do you have a seconder?
No idea. You need to find one.
Stephen?
Yeah, thanks,
Yes,
Chair.
I'll second Jane.
Stephen?
Yep, thanks, Chair. It was just actually on a point, I tried to get in earlier in the chat, but was overlooked. But it was just on a question of non-domestic rates. I think in previous papers on asset transfers, we've not necessarily included information on the burden and non-domestic rates that would suddenly appear for the new owners, as it were, where the council may not have been liable or in the past. So what is the figure for that, for this particular building, and will the new group, if it, should this go ahead, have to pay that, or will they get a discount, or what, or do we know what that is, and does the group know what that is? And secondly, just in terms of the, Ingrid, you mentioned an additional risk to the funders should that option 2 clause be put in. Is that right? I was just trying to understand that, because obviously that would only be a risk if the venture fails, in which case the funding would kind of be a risk anyway. So I'm just sort of wondering how that risk's articulated. Thank you. And the non-domestic rates bit.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the non-domestic rates, I would need to check that information. What I do know is that prior to the group taking on the management agreement, the cost to the council was of approximately £5,000. The cost currently is £2,000. So I don't know the exact figures. And in terms of, can I just ask you to repeat the second question, please, Councillor Thompson? Yeah, it's to do with, I maybe picked you up wrong, but you seem to suggest that there was potentially a risk from the funder's point of view if an additional condition was put in about recouping the cost of any sale, you know, the difference between the pound and the £100,000. Have I picked that up right? Through yourself, Chair. Yes, I suppose that there is a potential risk in that, and that is one that the group would need to work with the funders who have said that they've awarded in principle based on a full community asset transfer being achieved. I suppose there would need to be a bit of negotiation with those funders if option 2 was the one that we went with.
So in terms of that risk, Ingrid, is that reflected within the report? I'm just wondering if I've skipped over that.
It's not particularly, no.
Okay. Rob?
Adam, thanks. It was on that very point, because I was persuaded about the good sense of going for option 2. I'm not sure that we ever particularly want the assets back, but I think there's a fair point so far as the discount is concerned. But if we're being advised that there is a risk to or a potential risk so far as the funders are concerned that have already committed to this project, then realistically we need to understand that, or I guess go with what the area committee suggested. But is there any further information we can get on the extent of that? Is this a notional risk, or is there this has been introduced at the 11th hour? How are we to assess whether it's that much of an issue or whether it's something that can be resolved with a quick conversation, for example? Any assistance with that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think it needs to be a conversation that's had with the funders. I don't know if Jamie had anything else he wanted to add to that. I noticed he had his hand up.
Jamie?
Through your Chair, if that's okay. Yes, we know that funders do get nervous when what has been called draconian clawback conditions are put in place, because they are sinking money into a project, and whether fail or not fail, it's where that money goes back to eventually, I suppose, that is their concern. In terms also, if I can go in just a wee bit, in terms of the non-domestic rates issue, a charity that actually takes possession of a building and is actively using that building and not leaving the building vacant, it's my understanding, which I think would be the case with Ling. I think they are fully prepared to, in fact, they've been managing the building for a considerable number of years, I think 7. They would continue with that management arrangement, and the building would continue to be in occupation. So they're therefore in a position to apply for non-domestic rates relief. So I don't think that would particularly be an issue. Hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. I'm sensing angst from members around this potential risk that you've indicated to Ingrid. So I suppose a question from me is that there's an option in this paper to essentially agree to the asset transfer with the condition. Has there been something that's cropped up since this report for that risk to be highlighted?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so in terms of if we were to give it a risk rating, is it high risk, low risk?
Medium, I would say.
Okay. Jane?
Thanks very much. Gosh, what I thought was really going to be very simple seems to the most confusing. And I hope I don't think I'm alone in being confused. With option 2, is this basically saying if the project fails, has Ling got to find the discount money or simply hand back the asset to the council? I mean, this is what is confusing me. I don't really mind what happens. I'd like to protect the council's interests and give Ling the asset, or give Ling the asset, but protect the council's asset in the event of something going wrong. And that's what I thought. C option 1 and some sort of clawback condition based on option C would have produced, which is in essence what we don't want to do is burden Ling. That's really what I think is really important not to do. And I have to say, if they suddenly then are told that they've got to find that amount of money to reimburse the council for its risk, I would have said that that's really actually quite a burden on a group that seems to be managing an asset in the middle of New Galloway, which frankly is, I don't think, probably going to achieve 100,000. And knowing what I know about these sort of huge properties in the Stewartry, the church has not been getting £100,000 for its properties, and they are considerably more desirable than this one would be. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we seem to have come to a very confused situation where I thought it was really quite simple. So my worry would be that we are going to burden Ling with option 2. That's where I think the problem lies.
Stephen?
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Yeah, I mean, my reading of option 2 is it's not about getting the building back. It's just about recognising the value that we've discounted. And I suppose the point maybe that Councillor Maitland's raising is, well, it shouldn't really burden the organisation. It's really more to do with any subsequent sale of the building and any proceeds realised from that. The difference should have sort of redress the discount, if you like, in some way, so as not to lose that benefit to our constituents, I suppose. But I am a bit concerned about this non-explicit risk. I mean, I'm quite comfortable with either. Well, option 2 seemed to be more sensible, but if there's no indication that carries a risk with it, other than the perception that, because there's no additional cost to Ling because it's £1. It's only if there's a subsequent sale of the asset, in my reading, and they realise a sum of money, that would be an issue, in which case it wouldn't impact on the funders at all anyway. So I'm not really clear about in fact, the risk element that was being introduced today actually makes me uncomfortable. So I'm in your hands, Chair.
Uncomfortable is a word I recognise, but I do have a number of speakers who wish to come in, so I am going to bring them in. Ronnie?
It's a bit confusing about, what happens if the project fails. I don't expect the project to fail at all. You have a very good case here, very good business case, and it is trying to protect the council as well, and as we have done in the past. I think, if it did fail, then the investment that was put into the building from the funders and that, what we are saying is the building is worth £100,000 just now, and we are giving it for £1 on the basis that if it does fail and there is a sale, then £100,000 of that would come back, or £99,999.
Ingrid, anything you want to add to that?
Nothing really, except the fact that the the group is, well established. They've been running the building for a number of years very well, and that the feasibility study and business plan backs that up. There is a bit of work that we've got planned moving forward to support them in that, but yeah, essentially they are a very hard working and committed group that I think are really sound to take this project forward.
Okay, Rob.
Thanks, Chairman. I do sympathise with you in terms of the question you asked about, the risk that has been identified today not being reflected in the report. Clearly we've been given decision options. I think for future reports, if an option is being put up which is viable and competent in as much as we can give effect to it, but it carries a risk, then that needs to be there in the face of the report so we can weigh up the pros and cons. Because, just at this point, my question, Chairman, which I'm not sure who will be able to answer this, is there at this point a time pressure on this? Can we get this clarified and bring it back? I don't think that's necessarily what the community organisation will want. I'm not sure it's necessarily what we want either, given there's, we're now numbering weeks between now and the end of the council term, and I'm sure they would want a decision made, before we get to that natural break point, given that then takes time for everything to get going afterwards. So, is that an option that we could take today? Is there an opportunity to bring it back, whether it's to here or to a meeting of full council, or somewhere that we get the decision made so we don't inconvenience them excessively? That might be an option for us. But I do think that I hope officers will take on board the point about the importance of a risk they perceive being included in the description of the option that they're giving us. Unless it reaches a point where it's not an option at all. And we've got to be able to weigh that up. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So first of all, I will bring in Ingrid on the time pressure, but secondly, I do think there's a key thing here that actually members are unclear on the risk. And so I do want to take a governance point on this. So first of all, Ingrid on the time pressure.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm that a number of funders have already kind of held back the funding. When we started working on the project funding, we would have been through this process, had it not been for COVID a wee bit earlier. But funders agreed, a number of funders agreed to hold this back for a period of time. I'm not sure how that will. Again, I'm not sure how any delay would impact further. And there's also the other part of the process in terms of this needing to go to the sheriff as well, which kind of makes it a bit of a longer process.
Okay, and secondly, Tracy, I think the key issue in front of members in terms of the risk, which a number of members have spoken about, I suppose the governance question is how much weight should we give to that risk element? It's not in the report. Do we need to consider it? Can you offer us some governance advice on that?
Thanks, Chair. Our advice would always be that members should base their decision on what's in front of them, and if members don't feel that they've got sufficient information within the report, then my advice would be that they don't make a decision today, and that they would either adjourn, and we could possibly try and get some other advice from legal. I have got Nick discussing this with Vlad on the background if members would like his input. But if members aren't comfortable making a decision with the new information that's been brought to them that's not in the report, then I would suggest that they don't make a decision.
Okay, thank you for that, Tracy. Now, I do have 3 members who wish to come in, and one of those members has just put speak on the back of what Tracy has said. So what I'll do is I'll take the 3 members, so it's Ivor, John and Katie, and then we'll sort of try and wrap this to a conclusion based on that advice and try and agree a way forward. So Ivor.
Chair, by putting this clause in, I don't think you're adding any risk because of the fact that if it's going to fail in the first 5 years, it's going to fail in the first 5 years. Whoever gets the building after that might not align with the funders' requests anyway. They've put a business case in place that actually shows you that they're here for the long run, and that is why the funders have actually backed them. So I don't see how there can be an additional risk at this point being put in place. Now, the fact of the matter that we are asking just to say, look, we don't want to see this asset, be taken over. Oh, we'll try this for a year. If it doesn't work, then we're going to sell it. I don't see that as a risk. The group have been there for a long time. The funders are backing them for a long time. So the 5-year that we are asking for, I think, isn't an additional risk at this point.
Thank you. John?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, talking about being confused. Yeah, just to ask about option 1 that Councillor Maitland had put forward with a clawback of C, which is on page 176. Now, my understanding is if option 1 went ahead without any clawback, the potential funders would fund or put their funding forward for this particular group. Now, if we put the clawback of C into option 1, would that not be the same potential risk to the funders funding this particular project? I'm looking for a wee bit of advice on that.
Ingrid?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just reading C.
See, my understanding is that funders are coming forward to support this project on the understanding that the group have the whole asset to themselves. This is why funders come forward. So even if you put one of the clawback clauses, which we've got A, B and C, which is at the bottom of page 176, does that not put a risk to the funders the same as what option 2 does, where the discount has to be applied? It seems to me to be a similar risk.
And reading it, I certainly would think that. I'd like to hear what Jamie's thoughts are on that as well, if that's possible, Chair.
Jamie?
Apologies, Chair, just having a few connection problems there. I think down at paragraph 3.9.3, what's been said there is that members are advised that when considering and applying any clawback conditions, it must be done with clear justification, not be excessive in nature. I think just my knowledge of the Ling group, I think the 99,999 figure would be quite a frightener to that group and quite a frightener to potentially to funders as well. I think the council having the option of kind of first dibs on taking the building back, I think nationally that position is probably it is not particularly seen as a draconian condition, because I've seen that applied in other local authorities where if a project fails within a certain time, the building reverts to its original position. So, from my point of view, I don't think that inclusion of clause C or whatever it's called within those conditions, I think that's probably a preferable option all round. I don't want to preempt members' views on what a preferable option is, but Councillor Maitland's point that, a group, if I were a trustee of a group that was suddenly saddled with you either succeed with this or you're paying this amount, which is essentially what the difference is, rather than just the building reverts, because the assessment of the building is 100k, and I'm sure that's a good officer assessment. There's no guarantee that that building would actually recoup 100k. So perhaps a more palatable position for members as well, and a less risky position, and a more standard position in terms of what I've heard through community ownership support service and And Development Trust Association Scotland is that option that, it reverts to council if it fails within 5 years. And I think members, particularly local members, there seems to be a degree of confidence there that, which I would echo, that the likelihood of this failing within 5 years doesn't seem to be much. I'd put that as a very low risk, personally.
John?
Thanks. That's been helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Sorry, just as a follow-up question, you talked about the sort of suggestion from Councillor Campbell to be preferable. I just wonder if you can state what would be preferable compared to.
Yeah, my apologies if that's not clear. Prepared to what is stated in option 2, which implies that there's a, should the project fail, there's a liability and a burden on the community group, the trust, to repay a sum of 99,000, whatever it is, 90,000.
Katie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for letting me come back in again. Yeah, I think I'm with Councillor Maitland on this issue. What was relatively simple, we seem to be tying ourselves in knots. I'm concerned about a prospective risk that I'm not sure is actually, I don't know. I'm reading and I'm listening to what's been presented to me. And certainly I think it's really important to remember that Ling is a SCIO, is a charitable organisation with its aims. And I have had that reassurance from Jamie explaining that should the organisation choose to walk away, the SCIO, those are national guidelines that almost protect charitable organisations and their assets. So I'm comfortable from that point of view. I think getting that clarity over option 3, I think, is really helpful. I'm also aware that, this organisation is desperately trying to move things forward and they're going through all the processes. Stewardship Area Committee made their recommendations to us on the 17th of November. So that was, over 2 months ago now. And certainly from listening to all the discussions on this, I think I feel that we have enough information in front of us today with the assurances that, this organisation is a SCIO. There is clear clawback conditions available, and certainly as we've had assurances from council officers that option 3 would be considered reasonable, then I feel it's important that we do try and form a conclusion and we move forward with a decision today, because I don't think it would be particularly be seen as reasonable to delay this any further. But I appreciate I'm only one member of this committee, so I'll just say thank you for giving me the opportunity to sort of pull all that together and have those thoughts aired. Thank you.
So, Katie, can I just clarify? You said option 3 there. Option 3 is agree not to transfer.
Sorry, I said C. The option C, with recommendation 1 with the option C as proposed previously. Okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to allow Malcolm and Ronnie to come in then. I am going to bring this to a close. I have a number of concerns that I will make clear after that, but I will allow Malcolm and then Ronnie.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add a wee bit further confusion, if I can. Presumably, if we got to the stage where the organisation failed and we took the building back, and the organisation had spent its £200,000 upgrading the building, presumably the building would probably be worth considerably more, so perhaps funders wouldn't like the thought of spending a lot of money on a building just to hand back a much improved building to the council. So perhaps, and from that point of view, the £99,000 back is perhaps more realistic. But my own personal view after reading the report is I would actually just go for option 1 personally. But I would hate to see an organisation like this get hold below the waterline before the things got off the ground. And things have dragged on a long time. But I understand why people, and I've said it myself on some of these things, why we want to protect the council's interests. So in which case, we'll probably get the discount back. It's probably the best option.
Okay, Ronnie?
No, that was the point I was going to make. You know, if the investment in the building and then the building's worth £300,000 and it gets sold for that, then the funders get the £200,000 back and we get £99,000. If we get nothing, then they get the £300,000 for. So they're making a profit out of it, and the council loses £99,000.
Okay, so I said I would bring in Malcolm and Ronnie. I have had some advice from Vlad, and Vlad has joined the call, which I do agree with. And so on our way forward, Vlad, do you want to articulate that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I've been in another meeting to do with elections with the Electoral Commission and Election Management Board, so apologies that I wasn't here. I understand there's been some issues that have been raised, potential legal risks as well that weren't quite bottomed out in the report, and at the moment I would need to find the relevant legal officers that have been involved through this process to ascertain their views. And therefore, what I would suggest is that this decision is maybe continued to the next meeting, and that allows us to full out scope out any legal risks and give all members that full sight of those issues, rather than, in essence, playing kind of catch up on it, if that's agreeable to the committee. And I don't know, Ingrid, from Ingrid's side of things, in terms of the timescales, but again, I think that would be the most reasonable stance in terms of members having full sight of all information they require to make a decision.
Ingrid, anything you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Vlad, just to say that there is a bit of pressure in terms of the funding organisations. They're already holding back the funds which are subject to asset transfer. So again, it would mean that there would need to be further negotiations with those funders before we have any kind of time lag on it.
Okay. So on the back of Vlad's advice, I am happy to move a motion that we defer this report to the next meeting of FPT committee. I think there's a number of options. I appreciate that a number of members on this committee approach community asset transfer requests from a number of different points of view. I personally seek to protect the interests of the community group and of the council. I appreciate there's a number of members like to see conditions put in place. Personally approaching this decision, I saw sort of option 2 as a safe way to sort of protect the interests of the community and of the council, but I am concerned of the medium risk that Ingrid talks about, and I would like to receive the further information on that. That would a deferral would allow for that information to come forward and to ensure that the risks, the options that are available to this committee in terms of option 1, 2 and 3 are fully bottom out, and we make sure that there wouldn't be any risk. So I appreciate that Councillor, that Ronnie and Katie want to come in the back of that, and happy to let Ronnie in.
Thank you. I'm quite happy to second that, but because some concerns over the timescale on that, would it be possible to bring it forward to the full council on the 22nd, you know, as an additional item? And that might take care of the time constraints, if you're willing to do that.
I'm happy with that. Katie?
Thank you. It was exactly the same point, because if we're receiving a report to mitigate potential risks, but insofar as creating potentially more risks, it seems baffling. So if it can be taken earlier, I think that would be absolutely appropriate. So it was the same point. Thank you.
Elaine?
I have to say I'm not particularly keen on taking it on the 22nd. The 22nd is a budget meeting. It's not for the ordinary business of full council. And my concern is that you will end up with a budget meeting with a whole load of other things will come piling in. We'll just stick it in the meeting on the 22nd, and actually that's not the purpose. The 22nd is a special meeting of full council to consider and debate the budget. It's not really for the business of committee business and so on. So I am reluctant to start taking other things other than if it was an emergency. I'm reluctant to start taking other business on the 22nd.
Elaine, I fully appreciate that point. I don't actually have the council diary in front of me, so I don't know sort of what meetings are in what order. Tracy, could you sort of allude to any dates that would be available to take to defer this item to?
Thanks, Chair. I can certainly have a look at the diary this afternoon, and if we need to arrange a special one-item agenda of FPT, I'm sure we'd be able to find a slot in the diary in the next few weeks to get that meeting arranged.
Are members happy with that approach?
Chair, yes, I'm quite happy, but I mean, it could possibly be in the same day, if not the same meeting as the council. Oh.
I'm sure that would be a possibility. I'll liaise with Tracy on that. David?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I feel we're making a real meal of this one. Is Councillor Maitland's proposal still on the table, or does it have a seconder?
I believe so. I'm happy to put forward a proposal that has been seconded by Councillor Nicholson to defer. I'm quite happy to have a vote on that if there's councillors who feel otherwise minded. Obviously, I can get Tracy to outline that process, but my understanding would be that if elected members decided that they did not want to defer, we would then make a different decision. Tracy, am I right in that? Or I suppose, first of all, David, is there an alternative proposal you want to make instead of deferring?
Not necessarily, Chair. I think I would have seconded Councillor Maitland's proposal. Given the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes to get these asset transfers through the system, putting the condition on that's at option 2, I think is going to impact on the volunteers' enthusiasm who are involved in this. I think the simple option 1, with a clawback to the council, makes it fairly simple. It lets them move on. And I just fail to see why this is having to be dragged on to another meeting, a month or 2 months down the line when this organisation is desperate to get this moving forward, and they are a hard-working group already in that building. And it's, I have experience of this, and I know what it's like, and I know that there is a risk when it comes to funders and losing funders if you don't get a 5-year guaranteed ownership or lease on the property. And funders, they've changed their criteria over the past 18 months, a lot of them. So I would be worried that funders would possibly withdraw from this and just put the whole thing in the back burner. So I would be happy to support Councillor Maitland's proposal if she's still got that on the table and try and get this dealt with.
So I think first of all, David, absolutely, this is not, and my proposal to defer is not a reflection on the group. I very much hope and would expect, given the level of work that is alluded to in this report, that they will not fail within 5 years. But my main reason for it is to ensure that elected members have the fullest of information that we require to make a safe decision. I will bring in Tracy for some governance advice on this, and I'll also bring in Councillor Maitland. I'm happy to follow the governance advice in terms of having a motion to defer or to proceed to a full vote if Councillor Maitland's proposal is still on the table and she does not wish to withdraw it. Tracy?
Thanks, Chair. At the moment, we would have to take this to a procedural vote, which would be a motion to defer, and then it would have to be an amendment proposed by a councillor to proceed and determine the item today that's in front of you. That would be a procedural vote that we would take first, and then depending on the outcome of that vote, we would then make a decision on which option members chose to do.
Thank you for that advice, Tracy. Ian?
Thanks. Yeah, I would concur with what Councillor Inglis is saying. I do think it's out of a mountain, out of a molehill. I thought we'd actually done away with clawbacks completely. going back historically, because we felt that they were a waste of time really, and just with the inhibited any potential funding sources coming forward for the likes of these types of organisations. But I'm happy to propose that we move forward and make a decision today if that's necessary.
Okay, have you got a seconder for that, Ian?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay. Okay, so we will move to the vote on this, Tracy. Could you read out the motion and amendment for members, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we have a motion proposed by the Chair, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, and that is to defer this item to a future meeting to allow the full risks to be explored and made clear in the future report. An amendment proposed by Councillor Crother, seconded by Councillor Ingalls, to determine this item at the meeting today. So, Chairman?
Motion.
Vice Chair?
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie? Councillor Brodie? Councillor Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor Crothers?
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson?
Motion.
Councillor Fairbairn? Councillor Fairbairn? Councillor Giusti?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor Ingalls?
Amendment.
Councillor Johnston?
Amendment.
Councillor Lever?
Motion.
Councillor McKee?
Amendment.
Councillor McGregor?
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland?
Amendment.
Councillor Murray?
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson?
Motion.
Councillor Sloan has left. Councillor Thompson?
Motion.
Councillor Brodie, I see you're back in the meeting.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Amendment.
Amendment?
Yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Fairbairn, are you back in the meeting? No, he's not in. So the amendment is carried 11 votes to 5, so that the item will be determined at the meeting today.
Okay, so I will ask members if they have any further points of debate or if they want to sort of reiterate previous motions and proposals. I think, Jane, you had a proposal?
Thank you very much, Adam. Yes, I propose option 1, but with a condition which is the body of it is contained in 3.9.2c, which is that there shall be a condition suggesting that if it is no longer used by the community body for the agreed purpose, or the community body is wound up, this property will revert to the council.
Okay, do you have a seconder for that?
I'll second it, Councillor Brodie.
Okay, thank you. Is there any alternative proposals? Nope. Don't think that there is.
Sorry,
Tracy,
Chair, Councillor Nicholson wants to come in.
All right, sorry, Ronnie?
Does that motion still stand that we had regarding option 2? To me, in option 2, if the project fails within the first 5 years, transfer discount applied will be repaid to the council. But in option 1, the additional part of that is that the building reverts to the council, which the council may have a building worth £300,000. And in option 2, the building doesn't revert to the council, but we get the 99,000 back. So that's a better deal for the community organisation, surely. But anyway, does the motion still stand, and do you still want to go? But if
on a personal level, I would intend to abstain, since the committee hasn't followed the governance advice to defer. That is, so I don't intend to propose or second a proposal. Is there anybody else who does want to propose or second option 2?
I'll second option 2.
Elaine? Yeah. So that's Councillor Nicholson has proposed option 2, and Councillor Murray has seconded option 2. So we'll proceed to the vote if there's no other proposals. Tracy, can you take us through the vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the motion is proposed by Jane Maitland, seconded by Richard Brodie. And I presume that's to consider and note recommendations 2.1 to 2.4. 2.5 will be to agree option 2 as detailed in the report with the condition C, and to note 2.6. And the amendment is proposed by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by the leader. And that's again to consider and note 2.1 to 2.4. 2.5 will then become agreed option 1 as detailed in the report without any conditions. Is that correct?
First of all, I'll just check with Jane and Ronnie that they are correct. Jane?
No, I think one way around. I think I'm option 1, aren't I?
Sorry, Jane, yes. So the motion is to consider and note 2.1 to 2.4, agree option 1 with condition C and note D, and the amendment is consider and note 2.1 to 2.4, 2.5, agree option 2 without conditions.
Okay. David?
Sorry, Chair. Just clarity on option 2 without conditions. Is that?
No, it's with the condition.
It says in option 2, it's with the condition. Am I right? It's transfer onwards with the condition that should the project fail within the first 5 years of transfer, the discount applied will be repaid to the council. Am I right in saying that that's what option 2 was?
Option 2, yeah.
The amendment was. Yeah.
Yep, option 2. That's with the condition, so no changes to option 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Condition 2 as detailed in the report. Chairman?
Abstain.
Vice Chair?
Motion.
Councillor Brodie?
Motion.
Councillor Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor Crothers?
Motion.
Councillor Davidson?
Motion.
Councillor Giusti?
Motion.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor Ingalls?
Motion.
Councillor Johnston?
Amendment.
Councillor Lever?
Amendment.
Councillor
Amendment.
Councillor McGregor?
Amendments.
Councillor Maitland?
Motion.
Councillor Murray?
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson?
Amendment.
And Councillor Thompson has left the meeting. And the motion carries 8 votes to 7 with 1 abstention. So they have agreed 2.1 to 2.4, agreed option 1 with condition C, and noted 2.6.
Okay, thank you very much, members. I can confirm I have no additional business today, so thank you very much for your time this afternoon.